We're at the Museum of Local History at 190 Anza Street, and today is May 8th, 2017. I'm Patricia Schaffarczyk, and I'm interviewing.
I'm Thelma Marie Frates Jones.
And I'm Lorraine May Frates Harlan.
Both ladies grew up in Niles, and today we're going to talk about how your family came to Niles.
It's my grandmother's family, my mother's mother, and my grandmother and my grandfather lived in Newark area, and they got married in Newark, and then they took the horse and wagon and came to Niles in 1904 for their honeymoon to the Wesley Hotel, which still stands in Niles, and it's known as Time for Tea. Is that what's in there now?
Yeah,
That's
Time
the
for
business
Tea.
that's in there now. And they stayed at the Wesley, and then they went to the California nursery, and my grandfather started working there. And then they had 11 children in total. 9 lived. 2 of them passed, were stillborn.
Yeah.
She got married in 1904. Her first child was born, or their first child, in 1905, and she had them every other year.
Every
So-
year after that?
Every other year.
Every other
So
year.
905, 907, that's how I can always remember their birthdays.
Okay.
She had 3 girls first. She had Bernice, Leontine, Dorothy, Edward would be next, Adelaide,
Joseph.
and Joseph, and
The
then
twins.
my mom and her twin sister, and then Aunt
What was your mom's name?
Blanche, and her twin sister was Ida. And then my grandmother had my Aunt Mary, and that was in 1920. And 2 weeks after my Aunt Mary was born, my grandmother's husband passed away from the
Wow.
flu epidemic. So he had complications from the flu.
And what year was that?
1920. Grandma was born in Centerville, and Grandpa, we believe, was born coming to the United States, right?
He was born on a Chinese ship, going 3 days before it got to Hawaiian Islands.
That
And-
side of
and-
the family from the Azores.
What was your grandfather's name?
John Martin.
Martin was his last name.
Martin.
Okay.
We think it was either D. Martine or maybe Martinez. We're not sure, but they went by Martin.
So he came, did he have brothers and sisters that were on the ship? when
Yes, he
came?
was from a large family.
Yeah.
Okay, and
And
then
he-
how did they get to Newark?
I believe they stayed in Hawaii for a while, and then they came to San Francisco.
And how did they get to Newark?
Well, my grandfather worked for my great-grandmother and grandfather on the ranch, on the farm in Newark.
Your grandfather worked for his mother and father,
Mm-hmm.
so they came, so the whole family came to Newark at the same time? I mean, he was born on the ship. He must have been with his
Well,
His
he was born
parents.
on the ship, but my other grandmother and grandfather,
Yeah, that's our grandfather's parents. And our
Okay,
grandmother's parents.
wait, I'm trying to get this straight. So your grandfather, the one born on the ship, and his name was John Martin.
Our grandfather's name was Joseph.
Oh,
His-
Joseph Martin.
Right.
his father was
His
John.
father was John.
His father was John.
Right.
And John so that's your great-grandfather, John,
Mm-hmm.
and the family moved to
No,
Newark?
No, my
Yeah.
grandmother's family was from Newark.
Okay, your grandmother's family was from Newark. And what was her name?
Our grandmother?
Adelaide, and
That'd be our great grandma.
yeah, she was Adelaide. And what was the
Caldera. Yeah,
Caldera
her
was,
maiden name was Caldera.
and
But
she,
that's on my grandma's family. If you're talking about the Martin family,
Right, exactly,
that's not grandma, that's grandpa.
right.
Right.
So Grandpa Joseph Martin
That's right.
was
His-
your grandfather.
Right.
He grew up in Newark. or his
no, he
family.
came to Newark in his teens and married and worked on my grandmother's
Okay,
farm.
I got it.
Family's
He came to
farm.
work. He came to work for his
Francis.
his
Yes.
future wife's
Right.
Yeah.
parents'
Francis'
farm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And what was your grandmother's name then?
Francisco.
What did she do for the S&A?
She would do washing and ironing and take care of the children, do their hair, and I think she even made clothes. I'm not sure if she made them or not, but she did domestic work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She always did domestic work.
Yeah, that's how
And-
she took care of her family.
Even
All right.
when we lived with her, she did, you know. I remember Mr. Whitaker buying a chicken, but his mother wouldn't cut it up, and so he had the chicken delivered to Grandma, and Grandma would do it for him.
You had a funny story, Thelma. Or
She washed the cowboys' clothes, and she lived in a little tiny house that was next to, well, now the post office, but in those days it was a bigger house. And one night the cowboys, one night they came and robbed all the clothes off the line. So she had to contact the cowboys, and then they went up the Niles Canyon and found the clothes and brought them back to her.
So it was
Yeah.
sounded like it was a prank.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
Funny.
And my grandmother used to talk about how she made clothes for her sons. She'd cut when the clothes got old and they would shabby, she'd cut them up and make clothes for her two sons out of them. Yeah.
Did you hear any stories about what it was like on the California nursery at that time?
Yeah, at that time they had a lot of Chinese people there. And I remember my Aunt Mary was really good friends with one of the Chinese girls. Even after she got married, they still stayed friends. And
What was her name?
I don't remember her name.
It's on the picture.
It's on the picture.
Was it Fong?
Fong,
Was her
I
last
think
name?
was the last
And
name,
her
yeah.
first name's there too. I don't
Yeah.
remember. But
And I know when my grandfather passed away, the Roding family provided them with food.
Oh,
At that
that's
time, they had a kitchen where they cooked for all their help, and he provided them with food. And that's how she got by until she was able to, you know, get a job.
Where did she move after she left?
She moved into a little home on 2nd Street. The house is still there, and it was a 2-bedroom home, and she had all these children.
She had
and
9 children.
my mother said she remembers saying, "Where are we all going to sleep?" But what she did, she'd take one bed and she'd put 3 or 4 on the top, and then 3 or 4 on the bottom.
Bottom end of the bed.
Yeah.
feet to feet.
So everybody got by okay.
So all of those would be your mother and your aunts and uncles.
Aunts and uncles.
All went to school in Niles?
Yes. Yeah,
they
my
did.
Uncle Joe is the only one that I think that graduated from high school, because at that time you had to pay to go to high school. So my grandmother could only afford for the boy. It was more important for the boy to go to school than it was the girls, you know. I think my mother went to high school her sophomore year, and then she quit and she had got married and had me. So.
Okay, and so what happened to the other aunts and uncles? Same sort of thing, most of them started working when
Well,
they
most
were...
of them stayed in Niles, but
girls.
one went to Union City, got married and went to Union City. Aunt Dorothy went to San Jose, Santa Clara. And
They lived in Niles for a while.
yeah,
though.
they lived in Niles for a
Mhm.
while. And
Aunt Adelaide lived in Niles for a while.
yeah, most of them stayed in Niles for quite a while, and then they moved on later.
Your mother, when did she leave Niles? And did she work in Niles before she left?
Yeah, she, let's see, so when she married Dad, they went to Hayward.
And who was your dad? What was your dad's name and your last name?
William Frates,
Okay, and your mother's name?
Blanche,
Blanche.
Lorraine Frates,
Lorraine.
Martin.
When did they get married?
1938, the year you
Yeah,
were born?
1938.
1938. And after they got married, they moved away from Niles, or they lived in Niles for a
I
while?
think he lived in Hayward and they went to Hayward.
He
yes.
lived in Hayward,
Yeah,
yeah.
his family was from
They
Hayward.
lived with my Aunt Elsie for a while, and I was born at her home. I
Okay.
wasn't born in a hospital, I was born in a home.
And when did you come along?
Not till 1942. And I was born in Hayward, but I was fortunate and was born in the hospital, Levine Hospital
Mm-hmm.
in Hayward.
And where did you live in Hayward?
Russell Way, it was,
Russell
Russell
Way.
Way, yeah.
Oh,
Russell,
nice.
Yeah.
Yep, I
It was
remember.
my aunt's house.
And then what happened?
Well, my mother and father drank quite a bit, and my father and my mother had a lot of problems, and my dad would go off, you know, he was typical Portuguese, he drank a lot, never came home. And so my mother got tired of it and decided she didn't want to be a mother anymore. So we came to live with my grandmother.
How old were you at that time?
I was 6, and Lorraine was almost 2, yeah.
2. And what year was that? 1940?
44, I think it was.
Yeah, about
44.
1944.
How did you feel about moving to be with your grandmother?
She would
You don't
Well,
remember
it
you
was
were-
hard.
what was
It was
going on,
hard
yeah.
on me
Yeah, it was hard on
because
her.
being with alcoholic people, nobody cared where I was, so I just did whatever I wanted to do.
Mhm.
And then I came to Grandma's, and it was quite different. My grandmother was quite strict, and I had to rule the laws of her house, and so it was quite different for me. But I liked Niles, and I liked the people, the friends. I had made a lot of good friends, but it was quite an adjustment for me.
So,
And then what happened was my mother and father went back together again. So we moved to San Leandro. And then we stayed there for about 5 or 6 months, and then I moved back to Niles. And so I went into the 2nd grade at Niles.
tell me about your years in Niles from the time you arrived.
It was a simple life. My grandmother had an ice box. I mean, we had no television.
Wood
That
stove.
wasn't.
Wood
We just
stove.
had a radio and listened to the radio, and
Wood stove?
the
you
big
said?
thing.
Yeah, Grandma had a wood stove when we
Yeah.
first moved in.
Yeah, she just had a
And
furnace,
the icebox.
and we got dressed by the furnace in the dining room. It's quite different life than what you have now, and but then I can remember walking all the way down to my aunt's, which was past the California nursery. We would walk down there when they started having a television. It was only a 7.5-inch TV. We would watch, television. And then my uncle would bring us home,
Yeah.
And it was,
We didn't have a car at Grandma's house.
no, my uncle lived there, who never married, but he did not drive.
Eddie, our Uncle Eddie, he's the oldest boy out
Yeah,
of the 2.
and he worked at Shuckles.